This is the Mickey Miles and More podcast, your one stop for information on Disney races, Disney vacations, Disney theme parks, and more. Now, here are your hosts for the Mickey Miles and More podcast, Michelle Scribner-McLean, Chris Eliopoulos, and Mike Scopa.
Welcome to Mickey Miles and More 2.0. I am your host, Chris Eliopoulos. I am the author and illustrator of the Ordinary People Change the World series and the co-creator of Xavier Riddle and the Secret Museum. With me, as always, is the infamous, the not so cool, but so cool, Mike Scopa. Welcome, Mike.
I'm cool. I'm not so cool. Hi, Chris. How you doing? Thank you for inviting me. It's great to be here.
Oh, you sound so professional.
That's
I know. I'm trying to be the host. I'm trying to be the good host here. Also with us tonight is the infamous and so cool, but always so cool, Dr. Michelle Scribner-McLean. Welcome, Michelle.
Oh, thank you. I have two things to say. What about The Yawns Are Coming?
The Yawns Are Coming Too is another book that I've done.
All right, yes. And actually, I have three things to say. I have a shout out, but before that, I think Mike has a quote.
Oh, we forgot to do a quote. We have to go back to our old methods. So, Mike, you have a quote?
Oh, my God. Yeah. So when I was doing it, I don't care. I'm going to say when I was doing WDW Today, one of the most popular sequences was the attraction quotes that I used to do, and everyone used to guess.
Yep.
And I thought it was fun. So we thought about bringing that back for this little video cast. So starting with episode 1, I'm going to give you a quote from an attraction that may have been retired, that may still be here. I'm not going to give you one that's about to be opened because I don't know them, but
right.
Some of them are going to be tough. Some of them are going to be easy, but here's the first one.
Okay.
The quote is following: "It is time."
Oh, come on. Did you just immediately go for like the hardest one ever?
When we did a practice one, I got it. Let me just say that.
It's not what was it? The Timekeeper, the Robin Williams one?
No.
Say it again. What is it? I've got time?
It is time.
Oh, it is time. It is time. Michelle, any ideas? I'm sure there are people screaming into their
familiar and yeah.
It is time.
This is way back.
Oh, it's way back. Horizons?
1990 probably. To 94.
I'm gonna say I do not know.
You're stumping us on the first one, Mike. What is it?
Yeah.
So that was a line that was spoken by a cast member in a Rafiki suit and the pre-show to, I believe it's called
Believe?
Legend of the Lion King, which is in the attraction that is now Mickey's Philhar Magic.
Oh.
It was in Fantasyland, and it was just before the live show with the Lion King. So
interesting.
Who knew? You could just give us an easy one, right?
I know, you could just start kind of get us back into the groove here. You could have gone really simple. No.
What does Rafiki mean in Swahili?
Is this like Quiz Chris at Make Him Feel Stupid Night?
What does Rafiki mean in Swahili, Mike? I've asked you this a million times.
Friend.
Africa and Safari.
Michael wins the night. Okay, so Michelle, give us
I
your...
hope I got the name of the attraction right.
Okay.
It's either the Lion King or the Lion King Adventure. Legend of the Lion King.
To give us an easier one next time.
Yeah, next time.
Saying,
but all right, to make us feel better, Michelle, give us your shout out.
Yes, here's my shout out. My shout out is to somebody who is a travel agent. We know a lot of travel agents. We're lucky enough to have a lot of friends. And she is MEI travel agent Mandy Gonzalez, who is challenging herself after many years to run the Walt Disney Marathon. Hopefully it'll happen in January. And she is starting off her training. She's super inspirational. She is one of the funnest people I know. And I want to just give her lots of support and a big shout out. So
awesome.
Go for it, Mandy.
Yay. You can do it. Now's the time. Well, actually, I was going to say, like the real time when you were running the marathon, when did you start training? I started, I think, in August.
Yeah, I think it was August too. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So that was the big time. So anyway, so now that we're all done with the upfront stuff, obviously this being our first episode and this happening during a pandemic, we thought the first thing we would talk about the elephant in the room. We would talk about Disney's plan to open. As we're recording, Universal's just about to open up. So we wanted to sort of discuss the plans, what our thoughts are behind it, what we think is going to happen. Is it going to happen the way they plan it? So my first question to Mike is, looking at the plans we recently got from Disney about their staggered opening, what things are you looking at that you're questioning that will actually work?
Say that again. What
So the things that there are, so they're saying stuff
What
like
are
you're
you
going to have,
worried about?
you're going to wear masks, you're going to social distance, all that kind of stuff that they've now told us they're going to be doing. They're going to limit restaurants. You're going to, if you go to eat, you're sitting at a table far away from people, you can take your mask off in the restaurant. But then if you get up to go to the bathroom, you have to put it back on. If you're on a ride, you have to wear a mask. What are some of the things that they're telling us that they're going to be doing that you think you're questioning if they're going to work?
Well, first off, I question everything. I question them opening. So, I mean, let's start off with that.
Yeah.
They're opening up the Magic Kingdom and Disney's Hollywood Studios July 11th. They're opening up Epcot and Disney's Animal Kingdom July 15th. We know that there's going to be reduced capacity. We know that they're going to have temperature checks. We know that they're going to require 2 years old and up to wear masks. Good luck. I tried to wear a mask outside an 86-degree temperature here in New Hampshire today, and there's no way I could expect anybody to do that down there.
How long did you wear it today?
I tried to wear it for about an hour outside, and it was a cloth mask, and maybe a paper mask would have been easier. But, you know, the humidity up here, 86 in New Hampshire is not like 96 with humidity in Florida, in Orlando.
Yeah.
So that's an issue. So I'm thinking about the masks. I'm thinking about the social distancing. I'm thinking about, why would I want to go when there's no fireworks? Why would I want to go when there's no parades? Why would I want to go when I can't take photos with the characters I love? Why would I want to go when currently, as of today, and we don't know if this is going to be the case in July, there's a curfew in Orange County, 7:00, which brings me to the reduced hours that they're operating on. And finally, one thing I think they did do right is they wiped out the Disney all the dining reservations and the fast passes. But now they've got this up and coming reservation system, and I don't know how that's going to work. But for those of us who are annual passes, there's no guarantee that we could get in if we want to. So there's a whole bunch of stuff, Chris, that I really think is going to be very hard for them to go through with, because there's the factor that is the unknown factor, is how the guests are going to comply with everything, and if they're going to comply. So compliance by the guests is the key to the success, and I don't see it happening right now. We'll see. Hopefully things will change, but I'm not going.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, right? I mean, we just got. I sent you guys an article today that today was Florida's biggest amount of people with COVID, and so you wonder, is now the time to open up these parks? Michelle, being the scientist that you are, forget about just wanting to be there. Based on the numbers and based on the science, would you want to go at this point?
It's really interesting. I was mentioning this to a cast member friend of mine today who is furloughed. And I said, I know the biggest Disney fans ever. I do not know one person who wants to go, which is really interesting to me. Yeah. It just really, really worries me. The mask part is just one piece of it. The social distancing squad that they're going to have, and the the timeout places where you can take your masks off. I think it's all well intentioned, but when you think of all the different surfaces we touch, from the tram to the monorail to the the leaning areas in some of the movies to the stanchions that they have, it's really astounding, and it's worrying. I mentioned to you guys last week that my physical therapist, who's a runner, wears a mask here in New Hampshire for 8 hours a day.
Oof.
And she was, in her work, and she was noticing that she's a runner, and that even when in the weekends when she wasn't wearing a mask, her running time went down, her speed went down, and she realized that the reason it was because she wasn't intaking enough oxygen during the week. So it was impacting her. So I got to echo Mike, I just worry about heat exhaustion's a real problem even when you don't have a mask. So that if you're breathing into a mask for 8 hours, I just really, really worry about people. One of our friends said to me, masks aren't magical. And to me, that doesn't look magical. And I just want to add one more thing. This afternoon, I sent both of you the video from Universal that sort of preps people for, this is what we're doing. And honestly, it looked like a Saturday Night Live commercial.
Skit? Yeah.
But yeah, it did, because it's like we're happy with our masks, and it looked horrible to me. It really looked it beyond the science, which is a real worry, where the rest of Florida, the numbers are going way up, as you said. It just did not look fun to me. And I have DVC points. I have enough for 2 years now. I canceled 2 vacations, 1 a cruise. Just doesn't look fun to me. And you can't live Disney any more than 3 of us. I don't know. Just doesn't look fun. What about you, Chris? What do you think?
Well, so we had a trip planned for the Star Wars Marathon, which we didn't get to go to because it got canceled and everything got shut down, which is understandable. But we have a trip planned for August, and I've been getting, so I had dining reservations, and I've been getting emails canceling those reservations, and sort of saying they don't really kind of give you an answer as to what you're supposed to be doing. Like, am I supposed to rebook now for another trip? And then I don't even know if so Mike, beyond me, how about this? How about we look at it this way? I have an August trip planned. Mike, I know I've gone to the parks. I go to the men's room and I see.
Me too.
I know. Well, I'm better than the women's room, right?
I do not.
Okay. But I can't tell you how many times I see guys go and then just walk right out without washing their hands, right? I know. And I am horrified. Every time I go to the bathroom, I come out and I talk to my wife and my kids, I'm like, oh God. But then beyond that, you go on Pirates of the Caribbean and they say no flash photography, and boom, 2 seconds later, a flash goes off. Or or keep your hands and legs and arms and everything in at all times. And then you see people dragging their hands along in It's a Small World. Mike, do you feel like people are even going to follow these rules? And if they don't, is there going to be trouble with cast members?
So, Chris, I've been going to Walt Disney World since 1975. And in that time, I've observed things like you have mentioned. One of the things you didn't mention was, when you go into, let's say, Muppets 3D, and you're supposed to go all the way to the end of the aisle, that doesn't happen. Yeah. Probably going to happen now. They're probably going to have social distancing squads, saying, go here. I think that you're right. I think Michelle even mentioned early on about how many things we touch when we get out of the boat at Pirates of the Caribbean. We've got those rails to get on. When we are getting onto the Doom buggies in the Haunted Mansion, we don't pull down, but we're holding on to that. Mm-hmm. There are so many things that, we're holding on to the rail. Maybe when you've got a moving sidewalk, there are people who will be holding on to the rail. There's so many things that we touch. I don't see how they can keep up with cleaning everything. And the other thing is that you just mentioned, there are people touching things all the time and they're not washing their hands. They're not washing their hands when there's not a pandemic. How do we expect them to wash hands when there is a pandemic? I think that there are still some areas which we haven't even thought about. That won't be thought about until after they open the parks, and when they start doing these reopenings, when they start observing people, how they're going to do things. I don't think that you can use Shanghai as an example. Florida is different from the southeast area of the southeast part of the globe. I think there are so many things that are up in the air. I think it's taking a big risk. I don't know how I would do it if I was in charge. I think what I would do is I would say, let's hold off. You mentioned about your cancellations in August. One of the things that I was talking to Michelle about yesterday was that Mickey's Not So Scary Halloween Party is supposed to have its very first party on August 13th. Guess what? You can't go on My Disney Experience and purchase tickets. Why is that? Have they canceled it? Here's another thing. Michelle will remember this. One of the runners on our Mickey Mouse team, I believe, was the show director for one of the shows in
Studios.
one of the shows in studios, and it was in August when we did one of our things. I think, Michelle, it was when we did our Jungle Cruise to raise money for Give Kids the World. She mentioned how whatever the show was on the studios at the Hollywood, I forget, the Theater of the Stars, that the show was ending because the orchestra had to stop practicing for the candlelight procession, which is, we're talking August, and candlelight procession doesn't begin in November, which means they really want to perfect the show. By the same token, there are performers who perform on the nights that they have the Mickey's Not So Scary Halloween Party. Are they performing? We don't know. Are they going through rehearsal? So there's a lot of things a lot of little flags that say, this is not going to be fun. Like Michelle said, there's so many things that, they're going to be touching. I just can't imagine how busy the cast members would be cleaning and cleaning and cleaning.
Yeah, another thing too is when we watch that Universal video, if you didn't, if you have a temperature, you're going to be sent away. That makes complete sense. But what is that actually going to look like in terms of security? So you have a party of 9, and Uncle Fred has a temperature, but nobody else does. So what happens to everybody else? Or you have a party of you have a party of 7, and 3 people don't have masks. I know in the Universal video, we have masks for you to purchase. What is that? Do you get a mask? It's just really.
What if you don't want to buy one?
Yeah, what if you don't want to buy one?
Like, do they offer you like a free industrial mask?
Yeah.
I mean, so, okay, even beyond this, we know that they're not going to do fireworks. They're not doing parades. Now that you're talking about it, these performers now also have to be careful. So like you go to the Lion King show, all of these performers are on top of each other. Does that show get held up? At what point is it even worth it to go? Like, so we're paying well over $100 a day if you're buying a daily ticket. We have annual passes. Is it worth it? So you get to walk around a park. You have to separate. You have to wear a mask. You have to separate and probably wait on longer lines. Most of the attractions are down because they involve way too much. You can't, when you walk through Pooh or you walk through Haunted Mansion and they've got all these touch things in the queue that have to be closed off. Like, at what point does this experience not become worth the money? Michelle, is there like a scientific number that you think about where you say, oh, you lost me there. It's not longer any worth it for me to go. I mean, besides the whole idea of the inconvenience, but financially, is it worth it?
Yeah, I don't know the metrics behind it, but I mean, there's another thing that we're not considering too, and that is our cast members, right? So the cast members are being exposed to hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people a day. They're going to get their temperature checked and everything, but there could be somebody who's asymptomatic, so who has no fever, who is interacting with people. You do the best you can, but what about the shops? You go to Disney, and part of the experience is, for me anyway, is just to go into the shops and look around. You pick up a mug, you put it down. I don't know. I don't know how you could even calculate it. I really don't even know beyond my local grocery store how they're doing it. So I can't imagine when you look at all the different variables involved in Disney, how it's going to happen. I really don't. The resorts, the buses, the shows. It's heartbreaking to me, really.
Yeah. Mike?
Well, Michelle and I, Chris, talked about a couple of things earlier today, and the things just keep coming up that you don't think about until you start, chatting and say, well, what about this? What about that? We haven't even talked about, Michelle just alluded to, the buses, the Skyliners, the monorails. How do you deal with social distancing there? And then you talk about the science part of it, where we have heard that the virus is easily transmitted when there's a mist around. So what about going down that first drop in Pirates? What about going down that drop in the Frozen ride? What about all those Splash Mountain? Okay, that's number one. But even more recently, about 2 hours ago, Michelle and I were talking about this. If you're on a roller coaster and you're wearing a mask and the mask goes flying off, is it possible that the mask could fall and land on the track in such a way that the next vehicle hits that mask? Most likely those vehicles are built so that they are somehow locked onto the track and they're not going to fall off. But what about it coming to a screeching halt all of a sudden? And what if the person riding the vehicle gets hurled out? Yeah, there's seatbelts, but who knows? Yeah. That's a safety issue. I don't know if they've thought about that. They want you to wear,
they tell you to take your hats off, which is hysterical. You go on Big Thunder, they say take your hats off, take your sunglasses off, and yet they're going to make you keep your masks on. So it's kind of like a weird.
Yeah. So there are so many things that we, as much as we feel we know the resort, we know the parks, we know the attractions, we know the issues that are going to be around. I think we're scratching the surface. I think there's so many things we haven't figured out.
I'm fascinated about it to look at it as a science experiment. I'm fascinated to observe, and I truly, truly hope that nobody gets hurt and nobody gets sick. But I'm not willing to put myself into that experiment. I'm not willing. I want to watch and see what happens. I'm sure. I really sincerely believe that if there is a place where people are going to try to be as safe as possible, it's Disney. However, I don't even trust Disney enough to do it myself. And Mike, you and I were talking about this today because I think you and I had sort of a difference of opinion about this. We're coming from New Hampshire, so that means plane, rental car, where there are a lot of different variables. But even if I lived in Orlando, I wouldn't go. Even though I'm fascinated to see how it's all run, I honestly wouldn't go. What about you, Chris? Would you go if you lived in Orlando?
Like I said, we've got a trip planned for August, and we're basically at the we ain't going. It's funny. I saw. Well, I've got a couple of thoughts. I saw when they opened up Disney Springs, and at one point they opened up the World of Disney store, and they said there was like a 4-hour wait. My thought was immediately that it was just a bunch of bloggers and stuff like that. I don't think the average person is going to go back there for any great length of time. It's going to be locals for a while. I don't know even if I was in Florida that I would go. The other thing is funny that we pointed out, which carries into the Mike's conversation about the mist. We saw with Universal's thing, they were talking about the water park. And I was thinking about the Disney water parks, which nobody's discussed yet. They talked about the other parks opening. But the water parks for Disney, same kind of thing. Like Universal is saying you don't have to wear a mask in the water, but you have to wear it off.
Right? You don't want to be swimming with a mask.
But then you're 3 feet away from the person next to you. It's the same
Who could
thing.
cough in your face? Yeah.
The chlorine in the water is not preventing anything. So, Mike, do you think like what are they thinking other than we need to start making money?
I think that, as I would hate to say that money is the motivation here, I think that they want to bring the magic back to people. And I think that one of the problems is that they're not bringing all the magic. And I think that when you have, again, no fireworks, no parade, you've got a lot of the restaurants are going to be closed. You've got the social distancing. You've got the requirement for wearing the mask. You've got the reduced hours, but you don't have reduced ticket prices as far as I know. I think that it's just going to be a very, very much of a question as to what their motivation is. And, I feel sorry for them, but just like any other business, they're losing money because of this pandemic. They want to get back. They want to get things rolling. And maybe you need to try things to see if they work. You need to throw that whatever on.
People's lives, though, right? I mean, now you're not talking about like trying something out to see if like a new pasta dish at, Il Molino works. You're talking about the possibility of somebody getting sick and then spreading it to other people in that park.
Yeah, and Chris, you mentioned earlier in the show about the uptick in Florida, and if that continues, how much of an uptick is going to have the CDC pay attention to that state and say, we need to close Universal, Walt Disney World, you need to close. And if that happens, my thought is if that happens, there won't be a reopening until there's a real solid amount of data. That was from Michelle. Data, which tells us, okay, it's behind us. So this is a risk. If they have to reclose, and I think there was something that reopened and had to reclose recently. I forget what it was. If they have to reclose, then how do you make the argument to reopen again? If you can't do it now, how do you make, what kind of parameters have to be put in place in order for Jim McPhee to come to the Orange County Task Force and say, we're going to open again? Well, Jim, guess what? You're not going to decide that. Walt Disney World is not going to decide that. We're going to decide that. And maybe we're not going to decide it. Maybe the CDC is going to decide it. So yeah, it's just.
Yeah, it's
so many
thing
questions.
we didn't talk about during this. We talked about it offline, but during that meeting, everybody has different protocols. I know Legoland I don't think they even have to wear masks at Legoland, but SeaWorld presented, Universal presented, there were no questions.
Right.
No questions from the audience.
No, there was one, Michelle, remember?
And a lot of people recuse themselves because they're all connected in some way. But I was saying to Mike, if this had been like a faculty meeting about like changing a chair or something, we would have had 30 minutes of questions. There was 0 questions.
Michelle, there was one question. Remember, there was one question. You remember that question? And you and I said to each other, that's a very good question. It was the only question. And it was about, and I want you to tell everybody what the answer was. Remember, the question was to Jim McPhee, well, what happens if there is non-compliance from the guests?
I don't exactly remember.
And he
said, kind of
brushed
it off. He's just sort of.
He said we have a social distancing squad set up, and they are very persuasive. What does that mean?
Here's $10. Leave the park.
Yeah.
Well,
What does that mean?
Yeah, I don't know. This is again why I think it's just it's going to be really interesting to watch. I don't want to be part of the experiment.
Yeah. I don't want to. We're probably going to keep this subject for this show. So I'm going to ask a couple of last little questions. Which is, so now that the parks say they're opening July 11th, we are all annual pass holders. What's the feeling now that you are going to start losing those days for the pass? Like, do you feel like, I know some people who have it were able to just cash in and not pay anymore for their annual pass. I chose to let it drift and then go. Michelle, like, do you feel like that's not fair that they're barely opening the parks and yet they're going to count that as a day available for your annual pass?
I actually may see if I could get mine, a refund for mine, because
you're going to change around.
I'm going to see if there's an opportunity. I'm a DVC, so
that was going to be my next question to you. So hold on to that.
Yeah, my annual pass is less, but I had pretty much all of my points accounted for this summer. All those trips are canceled, so now I have double the points for next year.
Mhm.
And they're being very accommodating about points and banking points and things like that. But I really honestly don't think it's fair for my clock to be running when I really can't. It's not that I couldn't. I absolutely could. I guess it's my choice. I don't think it's fair for them to say, well, you can use it or you can kind of gamble on your own health. So
Yeah.
I think that they should just really offer the opportunity for people to extend it out a year or 6 months. I know that they've stopped it during the time that it's closed, but I think it should go a little bit further than that.
Yeah, my sister-in-law's got DVC. She actually has 2 DVCs. She had given last year her points to her daughter. She got married. They wanted to go to Florida. She gave them the points for that. They had nothing planned for this year. They were planning to do something later in the fall, but obviously this all came up. And she was literally today was just telling me that she doesn't know because she's going to lose those points if she doesn't use them. And it's sort of like, I don't know if that's the case or not. I mean, she hasn't really fully gone into it. So I was going to ask you guys if you knew anything about what can happen to the points if you don't use them this year. Have they said anything?
I was told that I could extend them until next year. I can bank them. It depends on, maybe there were points that she had banked last year, but I think they're being very liberal and very fair. And the communication's been very good from DVC.
Oh, good.
So
okay,
that's my feeling about it. But I have double next year, and I already booked for my spring break because I have all these points. So a lot of points, which is great.
Yeah, that's good. So
not so much for the annual pass. I think that needs to be a little more.
Yeah, they need to be a little bit more flexible, I thought, with it. But especially if they, it does them well to have somebody that's paying regularly, like an annual pass. But so, Mike, I know the future is very nebulous. We don't again. They've been talking about, the November, December time. There's going to be a flare up again. When do you feel like you'd be willing to go back to these parks, or when do you think they should actually open?
There's a lot of wait and see going on right now. Wait and see what happens by the end of June. Wait and see what happens during the summer, the fall. If I had to put a stake in the ground and say what date I would consider going, it would be a date that had the year 2021 on the end of it. Like Michelle, I don't want to be part of an experiment. I think that we're all holding our breath. We're all holding our breath to see what happens during this month, because a lot of the states, including Florida, really started opening up about 2 weeks ago. And it will take a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks before we really see what's going on. There's a lot of talk about this virus making a comeback, in the fall. So I just don't have any plans for the rest of this year to go. I'm thinking 2021. There's so many things up in the air, and I'm sure that the folks at Walt Disney World are thinking about things like, well, should we even decorate for Christmas? The Food and Wine Festival, is that going to happen? The Not So Scary, the Mickey's Very Merry. There's so many things that this year I think is so questionable that my inclination is that I would not even think about going until after the first of the year.
Michelle, and just maybe getting the RunDisney in a little bit. I know you had mentioned to me that you thought you might be going to do the Wine and Dine and then bailed, but they haven't mentioned anything about that one yet, have they?
No, they haven't. No, but I had DVC points for that too, and I bailed on that too.
How far are they going to go?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I was thinking about what Mike said. Harvard today. I don't know if you heard.
Harvard
up here. I work in Massachusetts at a college. Harvard decided 4 of their colleges are going online in the fall. So
really,
if it's good enough for Harvard, I don't know what my college is doing, but I think that's and there's some other Boston colleges that are not, and this is definitely like New Jersey where you are. It's definitely a hot spot. I think Florida is becoming a hot spot too. So
Yeah.
I really think that we need to like settle down and really think of this in terms of the long game. And to me, the writing's on the wall. November, there's not going to be one and done. I really don't think so.
Do you think they're going to cancel the marathon weekend?
I do. Yeah.
Mike?
If I had to bet, I would say yes, and I'll tell you why. There are a lot of they need to make that decision probably within the next 90 to 120 days, because there are a lot of people who need to plan ahead.
Yeah.
But I think that if the Wine and Dine, if Food and Wine Festival and the Wine and Dine race weekend is canceled, I think it just pretty much says that the Walt Disney World Marathon weekend could very well be in jeopardy right now. I don't.
Yeah.
Michelle, do you recall when, I believe it used to be in November, where we used to get our bib numbers? Chris, you probably remember too. I think that that kind of stuff, there are little signs and flags and milestones and places along the way that will probably give us a clue as to what's going on. I mentioned earlier about my Disney experience, saying nothing about Mickey's Not So Scary Halloween Party. You cannot buy tickets.
Yeah.
That first party is 10 weeks away, and you can't buy a ticket. So
Yeah.
what does that mean?
And the Boston Marathon was rescheduled till September, and that was canceled.
Wow.
So,
and one of the things, and you guys know this as well as I do, one of the big deals for the race weekends is the expo,
right.
and it's wall to wall people. So how can you do so? Can you imagine trying to employ some social distancing guidelines to that? Not to mention what it's going to be like in the corrals.
Yeah.
So
Or now the water stations and
the water stations. That's right. So what Michelle said, I think she's probably right. It's not going to be probably not going to be.
I just want to mention something else. I'm on the Facebook page for the volunteers for the races, and somebody made a good point today. It's a volunteers for the races and other things related to ESPN. And somebody made a good point today. They said, how are we going to volunteer when we haven't been trained on the new protocols? So all these things, all these things that do happen at the ESPN Wide World of Sports beyond the Disney races, they rely on those volunteers. So that's a whole level of training. Those races honestly can't happen without those folks. So they haven't been trained.
Well, I will say, so for the next show, the three of us will discuss a little bit about what we've been doing for training, what our plans are, what we've missed out on, what we're trying to do when it comes to exercise and health and running and RunDisney. But I want to end on a bit of a positive note, right? This is pretty all negative talk, but so I'll answer first because I want to give you guys a moment to even think about it, because I've been thinking about the question, which is everything is settled. We get a vaccine. Everybody's okay. We're opening up the parks fully. You've scheduled your trip. You're going down. This is a two-parter. Which park do you go to first, and what attraction do you go to first? So for me, I would think I would have to go back to the Magic Kingdom. For me, it's a toss-up. I love the more the older rides, the dark rides. I think I might either do Pirates or Haunted Mansion, just because to me they say Disney World. But I think I definitely think the Magic Kingdom is the park I would go to. Michelle, first park, and you don't even have to have the same. I mean, you could go a park and a different ride, but where would you go?
Well, I'm not trying to be a copycat. Epcot is actually my favorite park,
Okay.
but there are certain things to me that say I'm at Disney. My trip has begun, and it hasn't begun until I go to the Magic Kingdom and walk down Main Street USA, and it hasn't begun until I get on Pirates.
Okay.
That's when I feel like I'm at Disney. I'm like, yeah, I'm here. This is vacation. So those are me. But I'm not trying to copy you.
No, but that's what it is. I mean, other than going to the Dole Whip station, Mike, where would you go?
Oh boy, I guess I could say the same thing, and in many cases, going underneath the train station, going up to see the first glimpse of the castle is always, traditionally the first true, milestone for every trip to, say you're there. I do like Epcot, like Michelle, and I like walking in there. I think it's not as traditional. I think I always have described the Magic Kingdom as the crown jewel of Walt Disney World, and that's where everything began. I remember going to Walt Disney World when it was only the Magic Kingdom.
Yeah.
So having said all that, I guess that's the same thing. As soon as you turn that corner and you look up Main Street, you see the castle spires. It's like, okay, I'm here.
Smell the popcorn.
Yeah, I mean, when I used to go once every 2 or 3 years, I remember at the end of every trip, my last night was always in the Magic Kingdom. And I used to whisper very softly to myself when I would leave on that last night. I would say, "Thank you, Walt, for, giving me some time to escape, to help me deal with life by, escaping it." So I guess that's always going to be, my thing. I don't do that anymore, but I always used to have that last night was always.
He's a passionate one.
I know. Why would I think that? Bones. I'm a doctor, not a bricklayer.
I'm a podcaster, not a magician. So yeah, I guess it's the Magic Kingdom.
Yeah. No, it's. I mean, there's definitely. I mean, we could do a whole episode on the things we're missing, like you were saying, the smell of the popcorn, the going to get the Dole Whip, the, getting squirted by the camel when you go by a land. I mean, just there's little things.
That's not going to happen now.
I was out on my deck tonight planning for a workshop I'm doing last week, and I had my Bluetooth speaker and I was listening to International Gateway, like walking music, and soaring music, and it's just like, it just lifts me up. I mean, I'm not even there, but I just feel like, I'm going on soaring.
Yeah.
So.
I was doing it the other day. I was sitting out by the pool and I played I probably got it from Newell, the music before Illuminations. There's like an hour's worth of music.
I love that. Yeah.
And I was just feeling good. So
do you have torches around your pool?
No. I was going to say something, but I will say, have any of you like been watching any of the video ride-throughs to sort of make you feel better?
No, haven't yet, but it definitely has been on my radar.
My agent is a big Disney fan as well, and we have this argument all the time. She is a Disneylander. I'm a Disney Worlder, and we've gone to both together. We've both toured the different parks. She likes the intimacy of Disneyland. And when this first happened, she tasked me with finding all the ride-through videos to send to her. So that kept us going for a while. I think there is somewhere online you can find it. But so you guys haven't done anything like that? You haven't?
No, send us some.
Okay, I'll have to be sure to. Maybe we have to post it in like the in the comment section or something. It's not, if I can find it again.
I've seen people posting them, but I haven't done.
So, but like I said, I think in the next episode, we'll talk a little bit about Run Disney and running more in general. I do think that we want to discuss Disney Plus and what's going on there. And maybe we'll choose a show to watch for that episode and talk about it. But beyond that, God, it's really nice to sit and chat with you guys again. I could do this for another 2 hours, but we got to let these people go. So I just want to say thank you all for watching and listening. Oh, look at what Mike's doing. I know. I was getting to it, Michael. You don't have to get to it. But I will say, if you like what you see, please go down below and like and subscribe. And Michelle's looking up. Leave it to the scientists to go in the opposite direction. Or the sides, which way, wherever. Be sure to join us again. I think we're going to try and figure out a regular schedule. I think we might be talking either Tuesdays or Wednesdays. We're just getting started. So forgive us for the bumps, but thank you for tolerating us. On behalf of Mike Scopa and Dr. Michelle Scribner-McLean, I'm Chris Eliopoulos, and we'll see you on the next show.